Okay, good afternoon. We will continue our classes on research methodology and research and publication ethics. The class is conducted under auspices of HBNI, and we'll continue revisions. Actually, today, Kallul sir could not come and start or continue. He has taken few classes. He could not continue the classes because of some urgent work which he is busy with. So he asked me to continue my classes, and since we have completed our part, so we'll do some revision of the one uh, portion that we have covered, right? So till yesterday we have done day before we have done a lot of work, a lot of revision also we have done. So we continue what some few assignments. So what are the features of a good research design? So features of a good research design basically are that the research design should be flexible, appropriate, efficient, and economical. Okay, minimizes bias and maximizes reliability. The good design should have smallest experimental error, and it should contain maximum information and provide an opportunity for considering many aspects of a problem. So there are 4 points under a good research design. Those are: a good design is flexible, okay, flexible in approach, appropriate, efficient, and economical. Generally, the design which minimizes bias and maximizes the reliability of the data collected and analyzed is considered a good design. The design which gives smallest experimental error is supposed to be the best design in many investigations. And finally, a design which yields maximal information and provides an opportunity for considering many different aspects of a problem is considered most appropriate and efficient design in respect of many research problems. So, among the criteria for good design, the features of the good design, there are 4 features. Okay. Then we come into the next part, that is variables. Okay, in research design, what are the variables? So among the variables, we have heard about dependent variable, and a very important term we introduced during, if you remember, during our uh, research design classes is that extraneous variable. So a lot of things depends upon extraneous variable. So we have to understand what it is. So what is extraneous variable? Extraneous variable is basically an independent variable, but it's somewhat different in the respect that these variables are not related to the purpose of the study. Okay, so it is outside the purpose of your or purview of your study, but may affect the dependent variable. Okay, so those independent variables which is outside the purview of your study or the purpose of your study, but affects the quality and quantity of the dependent variable which you are studying, then it will be called an extraneous variable. So whatever effect is noticed on dependent variable as a result of extraneous variable is technically described as an experimental error. So we introduced the term extraneous experimental error after introducing somebody. So after introducing extraneous variable, right? So in what way introduce experimental error? Is that first we understood what is the extraneous variable, that is, it is an independent variable which is outside the purview of our study and or outside the purpose of our study, what which we are not measuring, but affects the dependent variable which we are measuring, right? And thus, it is an extraneous variable. The effect which is noticed on the dependent variable as a result of the extraneous variable is called an experimental error. So we have to minimize the experimental error. And in what way we can minimize the experimental error is to remove the extraneous variables, right? So our main criteria during research is to identify those extraneous variables and minimize its effect, right? Minimize them. Complete removal is not possible, but we may not go into the ideal situation, but a real situation where the effect of the effect of extraneous variable is minimum will be called a good research design. A study must always be so designed that the effect upon the dependent variable is attributed entirely to the independent variables and not to some extraneous variable or variable. So what is a good research design? Where your dependent variable or the dependent variable which you are studying is dependent only on the independent variable of your study and not to some external variable. Okay. For example, we studied one example, relationship between children's gains in social studies achievement and their self-concepts. In this case, self-concept is an independent variable and social studies achievement is a dependent variable which you are measuring in terms of marks obtained. But which is the external variable or extraneous variable? Is intelligence. Intelligence may as well affect the social studies achievement, but since it is not related to the purpose of the study undertaken by the researcher, it will be termed as an extraneous variable. Okay, this is just to understand what is extraneous variable. An example. Then we studied various research design, the challenges involved in research design, various variables, and all this terms in research design. We are just covering the important parts. And we study the principles of experimental design, right? So basically there were three principles for a good design. What are those? The principle of replication, the principle of randomization, and the principle of local control. So what is principle of replication? You can see from this diagram, we'll explain. The experiment should be repeated more than once. Each experiment is applied in many experimental units instead of one unit. By doing so, the statistical accuracy of the experiments is increased. For example, suppose we were to examine the effect of two varieties of rice. So there are two varieties of rice. Okay, we have to examine the effect. For this purpose, we may divide the field into two parts. One is the orange part and another is the blue part. Okay, we can then compare the yield in these two parts in the first figure. In the orange part, what we have got, and the blue part, what we have got, the yields. Okay. But if you have to apply the principle of replication to this experiment, then we first divide the field into several parts. Grow one variety in half of these parts and the other variety in the remaining parts. We can then collect the data of yield of the two varieties and draw conclusions by comparing the same. The results so obtained will be more reliable than in comparison to the first one, where the entire field was divided only into two halves. The entire experiment can be repeated several times for better results. If such experiments are due, it is called the principle of replication. Such a design is the principle of replication. Then what we study the principle of randomization, which provides protection when we conduct an experiment against the effect of external factors by randomization. The previous factors was the effect, we remove the extraneous variable by the effect of replication. Now with the help of randomization, which is more error proof or minimize the experimental error to the greater extent than the replication. Why? We'll understand that. It is just possible that the soil fertility may be different in the first half in comparison to the other half. If this is so, our result would not be realistic. In such a situation, we may assign the variety of rice to be grown in different parts of the field on the basis of some random sampling technique. That is, we may apply randomization principle and protects ourselves against the effect of extraneous factors, which is soil fertility in our case. Okay. So in second figure, you can see the principle of randomization. So if soil fertility was higher in one half and lesser in other half, we introduce the principle of randomization and remove the effect of soil fertility, which is an extraneous variable in our case, to determine the productivity of two varieties of rice. Okay. And finally, was the principle of local control. Here the variability is to make vary deliberately over as wide as range as necessary, and this needs to be done in such a way that the variability it causes can be measured and hence eliminated from the experimental error. So divide, in this case what we will do, divide the field into several homogeneous parts known as blocks, and then each such block is divided into parts, equal number of treatments. Then the treatments are randomly assigned to these parts of a block. Dividing the field into several homogeneous parts is known as blocking. In general, blocks are the levels at which we hold an extraneous factor fixed so that we can measure its contribution to the total variability of the data by means of a two-way analysis of variance or ANOVA, right? So these are the three major principles of experimental design. Then what is a good sample design? Okay, So you will, after designing the experiment, research design, you design the sample also, right? So what are the features of those? The sample design must be truly representative sample. Means it should be representing the sample, the entire sample, whatever the entire data you are going to collect. Since you are selecting some samples over the entire theory which you are going to propose, your sample should represent the whole spectrum of the sample which you are going to analyze, right? Sample design must be such that results in small sampling error. Okay, it depends upon the funds available. So sample should be appropriate with your funds available. It should be free of systematic bias. Okay, and the results of the sample can be applied in general for the entire universe. So these are the features of a good sampling design. That is, the sample is not too slow that it does not represent the entire universe, or very large that you take excessive time. So it should be, the sampling size be such and appropriate that it represents the truly a representative sample. Okay. It results in small sampling error. It adheres towards funds. It removes any systematic bias, and that the sampling can be, results of the sampling can be applied to the whole universe with a reasonable level of confidence. Then we studied research design, various type of research design, the informal experimental design, and also the formal experimental design. So we start with informal experimental design. We studied before and after without control design, where the test area was measured before the treatment was introduced. The level of phenomena was measured before the treatment was introduced, and the level of phenomena was measured after the treatment was introduced. Means you measure your dependent variable before applying a treatment in that area, and after applying the treatment in that area. So the treatment effect is whatever you get of the measurement after the treatment minus whatever you measured before the treatment. So this is before and after without control. But if you introduce a control design, after only, means only after the treatment introduction, how it will look like, it is demonstrated through this figure that the control area, the area is divided into two types, the test area and the control area. And we introduce the treatment in a test area, and we measure the dependent variable or the level of phenomena after the treatment in the test area, and the level of phenomena without the treatment in the control area. So the treatment effect is the dependent variable in the treatment area minus the measured dependent variable in the control area. So you do a control experiment. In this case, we learn what you mean by control experiment. So we should always try to do control experiments where the external or extraneous factors are minimized. Okay. Then before and after with control design, so we repeat the same thing, but we measure the phenomena before the treatment is introduced in the test area and after the treatment in the test area, and also in the control area. And then the treatment effect, whatever we measure, is most appropriate among the informal experimental designs. Okay. Then we did the lattice square design. Lattice square design, we chose how you can diagrammatically, it is given that if there are 5 varieties of A, B, C, D, E, then different seeds and different fertility level, if you separate, then in each row and each column, A, B, C, D, E, none is repeated. So this matrix shows how you should the lattice square design, how it looks. Okay. Then what are the methods of? Then we went into collection of data. So what are the methods of collection of primary data? So there are several methods of collecting primary data, particularly in surveys and descriptive researches. Important ones are observation method, interview method, through questionnaire, through schedules, and other methods, right? So basically, there are several methods of collection of primary data: observation method, interview method, through questionnaire, through schedules, and other methods. methods, right? There are 5 methods of collection of data. We studied the collection of primary and secondary, all types of data in details in the classes. What are the factors on which you will select the method of data collection? The selection of methods of data collection should be done keeping in mind following factors. What are those? Nature and scope and object of inquiry, availability of fund, time factor, and precision required. Okay. So what are the differences between surveys and experiments? So we studied in details what are surveys, what are experiments, what are observation, what are questionnaires, what are schedules, and what are case studies. So we took many classes on these, on data collection through surveys, experiments, schedules, questionnaires, and also case study method. Okay. So there was an assignment where asked to mention the differences between survey and experiment. So what are those? Surveys are conducted in case of descriptive research studies, whereas experiments are part of experimental research studies. So this is very simple. Okay. Survey type research studies usually have larger samples because the percent of responses generally happens to be low. Surveys are concerned with describing, recording, analyzing, and interpreting conditions that either exist or existed. The researcher does not manipulate the variable or arrange for events to happen. Experimental research provides a systematic and logical method for answering the question. What will happen if this is done when certain variables are carefully controlled or manipulated? In fact, deliberate manipulation is a part of experimental method. Most of the students who are attending the classes are doing experimental methods or experimental method of research. So you all know that you are manipulating some factor in your measurements or you are doing controlled experiments, and this deliberate manipulation is part of your experiment. Well, in surveys, you are not doing that, right? So this is one major difference. Surveys are usually appropriate in case of social and behavioral sciences, whereas experiments are mostly an essential feature of physical and natural sciences. Okay, so in sciences, mostly you do experiments, while surveys you do in case of social and behavioral sciences. Surveys are an example of field research, where an experiment generally constitutes an example of laboratory research. So in general, all things are written in general. Experiment can be converted, can be conducted in field as well, but in general, what we say that survey is always a field research, where experiments are in general conducted in laboratories. Surveys may either be census or sample surveys, but in case of experiments, data are collected from several readings of measurements. Generally, you do multiple experiments, right? So these were the major difference between survey and experiments. First is that survey are for descriptive research, experiments are for experimental research. Okay. Survey type have larger samples because the responses are generally low, where experiments you have always, most of the times you have responses unless and until they're in experimental level. Third is that surveys, we do not manipulate the variable or arrange them into or arrange for events to happen. Whereas in experimental research, you manipulate or do manipulate certain variables of your experiments, right? In fact, it's a deliberate manipulation to understand the effect of your dependent variable, okay, by the independent variable. So this is what you do in experiments. Surveys are generally for social and behavioral science, while experiments are mostly for natural and physical sciences. Surveys are an example of field research, while experiments are generally conducted in laboratories. Okay, so this is what the difference between surveillance and experiments we listed. What are the common challenges in data collection? So one is that access to participants. Okay, accessing the target population of participants can be challenging, especially in sensitive or hard to reach communities. Sample size and representativeness, determining the appropriate sample size that is statistically significant, representative of the population of interest, can be challenging. Data quality control, so that is one another challenge. What is the quality of the data? How will control that? And time and resource constraints. So always time and funds play an important role in your most of the research factors, right? So access to the participants, sampling size, representative, whether it is too representative the universe or not, data, whatever you're generating, how will you do the quality control, and time on resource constraints. Resource means funds, definitely. So these are the 4 common challenges faced during data collection. What is the significance of research report? Significance research report is considered a major component of the research study. But the research task remains incomplete till the report has been presented and written, right? So we all know unless and until the research is written or documented, it is incomplete because you do not have a target audience or there is no need readers of your inquiry, right? So whatever you are investigating, you have to jot it down so that it is available to the researchers for their reading purpose. As a matter of fact, even the most brilliant hypothesis, highly well designed and conducted research study, and the most striking generalizations of findings are of little value unless they are effectively communicated to others. So effective communication can be done through an attractive research report, right? Mention the different steps in writing a report. What are those differences? Steps: logical analysis of the subject matter, preparation of the final outline, preparation of the rough draft, rewriting and polishing, preparation of the final bibliography, and writing the final draft. So the final draft, this is the one which you will circulate for communication to others, right? State the techniques involved in data interpretation. So after what is data interpretation? So these are the different techniques involved in data interpretation. But those research must be given reasonable. Researcher must give reasonable explanation of the relations which he has found, and he must interpret the lines of relationship in terms of underlying processes, right? Extraneous information, if collected in a study, must be considered. It is advisable before embarking on final interpretation to consult someone who has insight into the study. So, third is that expert opinion, and fourth, researcher may accomplish the task of interpretation only after considering all relevant factors affecting the problem to avoid false generalization. So false generalization should be avoided. So these are the 4 techniques involving data interpretation. And so this is all we revised. And let us, because we have some time, so let us discuss some additional concepts which we have not gone through the class in the research methodology, because we have some time. So let us discuss. Technique involved in defining a problem. Well, we have defined, we have done defining a problem, but there are additional information which we can study. What are those? Defining a research problem properly and clearly is a crucial part of research study and must in no case be accomplished hurriedly. Hence, the research problem should be defined in a systematic manner, giving due weightage to all related points. What are those? Statement of the problem in a general way, understanding the nature of the problem, surveying the available literature, developing the ideas to discussion, rephrasing the research problem into working conclusion. I think we have already done this, and we have done this in detail. So it's not an additional concept. In fact, you know this concept very nicely, that research problem is a very important and integral part of your research. Unless and until you have clarity about the research problem, you won't be able to do a proper research design and data collection subsequently. And definitely other steps like interpretation and analysis. So what we have to do, we have to do or propose a very nicely the problem which you are going to solve or analyze. What are these? How you can do that? That initially, in a general way, you state the problem first. You have certain knowledge base, and you state the problem in a general way. Then try to understand the nature of the problem. How can you do? You can do these 2: surveying the available literature. You should do them, and also discuss with the experts. So those 2 will help you. These 2 steps, literature survey and discussion with the experts, will help you in refining or upgrading, basically, uplift your general problem statement which you did in the first stage. But first stage is necessary. You cannot sit down and always try to be accurate or predict a very good research problem initially itself. No, first write the statement of your research problem in a general way, and then apply these 2 steps, means literature survey and discussion with experts, and try to understand, have insights into the problem. Then you can rephrase your research problem into a working proposition, which is the one which you will finally adopt and continue your investigation. So this is how you can refine and or uplift your research by refining your research problem at the initial stage. For example, why is productivity in a specific country so much higher? Okay. In this form, the question has a number of ambiguities, such as what sort of productivity is being referred to, with what industries the same is related, with what period of time the productivity is being talked about. In view of all such ambiguities, the given statement of the question is too much general to be amenable to analysis. Rethinking and discussion of the problem may result in narrowing down the question to, so why is productivity? I am not naming the country, in some country, maybe India or India, so much higher. Okay. But what sort of productivity? Whether it is industrial or some other thing. Okay. What are the industries specific? In which time period the productivity is higher? So these ambiguities cannot be understood in your first general statement. But you have to propose a general statement at the initial stage. Then you do a literature survey and discussion with experts. Then you rethink, have insights, and come down into specifying the problem. So what is your modified research problem? What factors were responsible for the higher level productivity of countries' manufacturing industries during the decade 71 to 80? The latter version of the problem is definitely an improved over its earlier version, but the various ambiguities have been removed to the highest extent possible. Further rethinking and rephrasing might place the problem on a still better operational basis, as shown below. To what extent did the labor productivity in 71 to 80 in a specific country was exceedingly high with respect to 15 selected manufacturing industries? So this is a problem which a statistical analysis or a statistical researcher will investigate and by proper data collection, analyze, interpret, and propose a conclusion. But initially, he may not be equipped to propose the final version of the research problem. So initially is to jot down a general way, expert understanding, expert discussions with experts, proper literature survey will help them to refine that into modified research problem, and further insights into it will lead to the rephrasing and stating the final research problem. Okay, this is how you can improve. Okay, sources of research problem. What are those? Reading, literature survey, academic experience, daily experiments, exposure to field situation, consultations, brainstorming. Brainstorming is an important factor nowadays. A lot of groups are going through this. So there are various research groups which sit down and do brainstorming sessions every week, somewhere every month, or something like that. But the seniors experience help the juniors, right? In research and intuition. Intuition is a factor. Okay. How to conduct the literature survey? How we will conduct it? A literature review is a survey of scholarly sources of a specific topic. It provides an overview of the current knowledge, allowing you to identify relevant theories, methods, and gaps in the existing research. The basic component includes a description of the publication, a summary of the publication's main points, a discussion of gaps in research, an evaluation of the published contribution to the publication's contribution to the topic. So you should keep a well-defined or when you are doing a literature survey, you should store it and identify the gaps in those literature so that those become the stepping stone of your research problem, right? Or the problem which you are going to analyze. So this is how we will conduct a literature survey with an analytical mind, so that you see the main points of the publication, identify the gap areas, okay? So that you can contribute on the topic. Important concept related to research design, what are those? So these are very important because research design, we understood what are in details, what are dependent and independent variables, extraneous variable, okay? We discussed today also, what are extraneous variables, control experiment, confounded relationship, research hypothesis, experimental and non-experimental hypothesis is testing research, experimental and control group, treatments means the modifications or the modulations which you are doing, experimental and experimental unit. So we all these discussed in details These are the concepts of research methodology classes, basically, which you were introduced to. Okay. What are the tests of good measurements? So you do measurements, how you will test? So these were done, I think, in the other class by Renia Madam, that you do a test of validity, test of reliability, test of practicality. So good measurement must meet the tests of validity, reliability, and practicality. In fact, these are the three major considerations one should use in evaluating a measurement tool. Validity refers to the extent to which a test measures what we actually wish to measure. Reliability has to do with the accuracy and precision of measurement procedure. Practicality is concerned with a wide range of factors of economic convenience and interpretability. So what is test of validity? Validity is the most critical criteria and indicates the degree to which it measures what is supposed to measure. Okay. What is the test of reliability? It is reliable if it provides consistent results. Definitely, you have to do all these three tests. In test of practicality can be judged in terms of economic convenience and interpretability. Okay. And finally, we come to the attributes of a research scholar. So these are the all attributes we as researcher should possess. If we lack in some area, we should give some time to improve upon. Okay. So first is self-confidence. So this is one of the major attributes of a research scholar. We should have a lot of self-confidence and then dedication. Dedication is, you can understand that one of the important criteria for doing a good research. A person who is dedicated, even after failures, he will continue to work upon it, how to make it a success. Okay, so this is how dedication helps during the times of failures. Concentration. So concentration. So there are some various quotes on concentration. So I will not go into those philosophical areas, but concentration for a research scholar is one of the most foremost thing which is required, because whenever you are thinking or analyzing a data, when you are posing a problem, a huge level of concentration is required. Otherwise, we won't be able to focus on the problem or find out. You have very good data, but you may not be able to find out the major findings from the data. So there are various theories on concentrations. Well, it is beyond the scope of our classes. So there are various quotes, there are various theories. So one theory is I don't know, by Mihai, one of the philosophers, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, that the concept of flow. So when you are in flow, when you are concentrated, you have very good ability and you are taking very good challenges. So always you have to take very good challenge, right? Whenever you are doing any research, try to read very high impact journal articles in your field. That will help you in increasing the level of research and also come in flow. Okay, if you have a very good ability. We may not be able to publish in that high journals, but if we read those, that will set high standards. And with concentration, if we read, we will be able to correlate with whatever our experimental results is and then help us in proposing better interpretation and analysis of our data. Determination. So again, we told about dedication. Determination is another attribute that a researcher must have. So research is a very difficult profession, right? But very interesting and very, what I will tell, suitable for people who are dedicated, concentrated, and determined, and have an analytical mind. A determination and analytical mind. So determination means you all know that in times, certain times, you will get good result, good data collection. Well, you will have good journal outputs. Sometimes it may not be so, but we are determined. Okay, we have to go to the end. Once we start, we have to go to the end. scientific discipline. So we have to maintain scientific discipline, all of us who are doing research. And another is a global outlook. So always when we start a research, definitely we do a lot of literature survey. But finally, what happens as we go on and proceed in our research, it happens with me, I don't know with you or not, we slowly gets detached from what is going on globally. That should not happen. I also suffer from that, but we should always keep in touch with what is happening globally in our field. Okay. Innovative approach. Well, many experts I have listened to many expert scientists where they mentioned that whatever you should not do delta research. Delta means means small derivative research of what is done. So these were their theory. So I'm just conveying it to you. So where they say, okay, somebody has done. So say for material research, I always give examples. So okay, somebody has done work with iron oxide catalyst. Okay, we do and doped copper into it, say 10%. So we delta research, it means 20% in dopancy or 50% in dopancy, or we dope a different material. Well, research should not be delta research. Instead, innovative thinking, something innovative approach, something out of the box thinking. So these are the general terminologies used in research. And an innovative approach will help a researcher to shine in his or her field. Originality, you always have to maintain. So whatever we are jotting down means during the writing stage, the originality comes that we should always report what we have gathered. Whatever data we have collected, we should report that. That is, the report should be original. What we have collected data should not have been reported by others, right? So that it is not a repeated of the other research. So our research should be original. There is a researcher like us should have intellectual curiosity. So our mind should always be bubbling with curiosity that what will happen if we do such modification or manipulation in our experimental dependent variable, right? Researchers should have a flexibility, means our line of thought should not be one way. So this way, I think the HBNI's criteria of that every year we have doctoral committee meetings, right? So generally while doing research, what happens? We lose flexibility. Our suppose myself, we look the problem in one way, okay? Although there are several roads, but we have a vision in only one road. But these doctoral committee meetings, what happens? There is chairman, there are several members, the guide, your co-guides, technical advisors. So after looking into your research, your thought process, they propose a different idea, right? They critically examine our findings and also give very nice, very nice advice on or advices in a different way, to think in a different way and do experiments in novel kind or original experiments, which comes from a curious mind and helps us to look into different areas of our problem. And then we can start investigating in those areas if we listen, of course, listen to the doctor. Somewhere I've seen a lack of time or other factors. We may not be able to investigate all areas of our research. So the flexibility means that our thought process or during interpretation, we should have good flexibility and also means consider others' opinion in our research. Freedom from the obsession of clock and calendar that we have understood probably. Keen observation. So that is another criteria that or attribute of a research scholar. Intelligence, well, intelligence, what I will tell, it is fixed or it may evolve as you do curiosity-driven research or applied research with a lot of curiosity. Automatically, you collect data, analyze, interpret, write it down, and identify the gap barriers, start new problem, and repeat the same things automatically with intelligence. I think it's a dynamic phenomenon. Passion for knowledge, well, we all have that. Questioning attitude. This is very important in many places. I've seen this why questioning is not there. Not only question the others, also you have to question ourselves. Well, I have to question myself. Okay, why I am doing this? Why I am not looking into this direction? And also question others, experts in your field. So this attitude helps. This attribute, if research scholar, if it is there, it helps in his or her research. Spirit of inquiry, insight. This is a very important attribute. Means to have insight, and this insight cannot be just the attribute cannot be have, but the insight grows as you do research. Sometimes you have to stop, reflect, accept what is going on, and have insight. Okay, this is what is the real scenario, and we have to do. Precision and accuracy is very, very important. Unless and until your data is precise and accurate, it becomes difficult to publish in high standard journal. Resilience to withstand temporary setbacks. We all face temporary setbacks. This is a natural phenomenon. And it has gone through me also, and probably many people. And that is where the determination comes, determination and dedication. If we will have or we will develop the resilience to withstand these temporary setbacks. Persistence, then we have persistence. Okay, patience, persistence. Those patience, persistence are linked with the resilience. So persistently, we have to show output and have the patience. If we are, say, having setbacks, we should have a patience to wait for the perfect time. Social skills, okay. Socializing an important part during your research life. You'll enjoy your life in that case. And presentation skills, very, very important. Some people I have seen just uplift their research work by presenting the work in a very attractive way. Okay, and writing skills, of course. These two are very, very important, the last two. Presentation and writing skill, initially we lack, but more and more we present and more we write, the skills are definitely going to improve. Okay. So these are the attributes of the research scholar. See, check where whatever you have, whatever I can check, whatever I have, and whatever I lack, and where I can improve upon. Well, improvement is again a dynamic phenomenon. There is an improvement infinity. So definitely these are the attributes. We should continuously write, we should continuously present, we should be resilient to setbacks, we should be patient and persistently doing our work, we should question, we should have keen observation, we should be determined, dedicated, concentrated, and we should have discipline. We should do original research. We should have the flexibility to consider others' opinion. Okay? So these are, I think, we should have for good research output. But are some common errors made in research? Selective observation. Okay, this is where again the doctoral committee meetings help that I've observed. Means through my experience that again we definitely we have our thought process generally going in one direction, and we are observing that data in a selective way. Other minds, when they look into the same data, that selectivity is withdrawn and it becomes more global, and we can find out the errors made in our research, or we can interpret whatever data we have collected in a better way, right? Such selectivity is lifted. So second is inaccurate observation. Third is overgeneralization. So this is one case we tend to also happens with me sometimes, that we overgeneralize something. Acha, I have got something like this after doping copper, so we should continue getting like this over the entire concentration rate. It's not true. We should not generalize. Okay, if we have got such result by such doping, 15% doping, or we have seen this observation by this manipulation in our experiment, the same manipulation in a different set of experiments with a different sample will yield the same results. So the theory which we propose after our research should not be too general. Okay, made up information that we generally avoid. Illogical reasoning, that is also important. We should avoid such things. Ego involvement in understanding, that also have something. Sometimes some people say, no, I am right. But once the flexibility is less, the researcher tends to fight, okay, my viewpoint is only right, the other viewpoints are wrong. Well, we might be flexible, let us be flexible and try to listen to other viewpoints. If they may not agree, it's okay. So ego is one way required also. Premature close of inquiry, we should not do. But this is linked to temporary setbacks. If we sometimes going through a rough patch, we are not getting results, we are not getting output, we tend to close the inquiry, right? But we should not do that. Try to avoid premature closure. Try to complete it. Be persistent. Have patience for completing your study. Since you have initiated, let us complete. Okay? And mystification means less clarity. Anyways, thank you for listening and thank you for understanding today cooperation from your end. Today we could not have the regular class, so I just revised whatever we had done earlier. We did complete some assignments, more assignments we have done in earlier classes. And also we introduced some new concepts, specifically the common errors made in research. It means the last two slides, and the attributes that a research scholar should have. These are outside syllabus, these two slides, but I thought we can discuss so that we can keep these slides are with you. So sometimes if you have some setbacks, or sometimes if some of the attributes we are lacking, we can try to improve that, and we should minimize errors in our research in this fashion. Okay, so thank you for listening, and from next class, Kalal sir will continue ethics. Thank you.